people of Chelmsford, please welcome to the stage, Miles Jupp. Hello, 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 hello. Chelmsford, welcome. Welcome to the Chelmsford Theatre, welcome to my show, On I Bang, which is essentially a story, so long in fact that it is almost as long as a telephone conversation with my mother. And like a telephone conversation with my mother, only one person will be doing any of the talking. Unlike a telephone conversation with my mother, that person will be me. And it's not as long, I must point out, as a telephone conversation with my mother. The only thing that is as long as a telephone conversation with my mother is a voicemail that has been left by my mother. August the 24th, 2021. It started out as a perfectly normal day. I was in London. I was filming a Jed Mercurio drama for ITV. Just a couple of scenes. If you're later watching it whilst at the same time having an argument with your spouse about the best place to park near your local walk-in minor injuries clinic, you may very well not have noticed that I was in it at all, or so I was informed by my mother. It's part of a monologue that covered a lot of the same ground as an earlier voicemail. One of the things I love most about acting is being forced to get under the skin of a character whose life and experiences are completely different to my own. And in this instance, I'd been asked to play a man hosting a topical radio show. And I thought, well, Christ, who's got the patience to do that, you know, for more than 12 series? But look, a job like this, it's not even a day's work. You turn up, you pop the costume on, you say the words. If somebody starts shouting at you, just try doing it differently. You know, it's not brain surgery. So the night before, I got a train to London, checked into a hotel, and went out for something to eat. A Thai restaurant, can't remember the name. Or what I ate. With a story like this, I really feel it's the details that help bring it to life. Probably a Thai green curry. I used to do the red ones, but I know that I hadn't put any Rennies in my sponge bag. I can tell you that I almost certainly drank 2 large glasses of red wine because I tend to drink less when I'm on my own. I slept almost certainly very badly. And the next morning I woke up early and I got driven to the unit base where the trailers and so forth are to get ready, because you get trailers, you see, when you're doing an acting job of this type. Much needed, frankly, a trailer. It's a personal, private space, somewhere for you to sit and decompress in between serious, often intense bouts of acting. Often there are some complimentary snacks laid on for you, crisps, Haribo. I know there are some people who think that acting is the toughest job in the world, but it's probably this sort of thing that helps distinguish it from the life of a paramedic. You have to put up with all sorts of unpleasant scenarios, and as a result of the misplaced priorities of the health service, have to pay for their own Haribo. It's probably what those strikes are about. I'm by no means an expert. So I had my makeup done. I went and met the costume designer, Roz. We'd worked together in Northampton once, had a bit of a chat. Got driven to the set, met the first assistant director. We'd worked together in Glasgow once, had a bit of a chat. Met the director, Jenny. We'd done a Midsummer Murders together once, had a bit of a chat. Honestly, the chat is the bit of the job that really takes it out of you. Makes you realise why Graham Norton is paid as much as he is. And then we very quickly shot the scenes, and someone said, well, you can go home now. So I got into this people carrier that started driving back to the unit base. Now, on that journey to the unit base, a light suddenly started flashing, right? Not in the car, not in the dashboard. It was in my left eye, right? Bottom left, not fast, just sort of flick, flick. Like one of those little muscle spasms you get when you haven't slept properly, just flick, flick. I thought, oh, that's annoying. Flick, flick, it'll pass. Flick, flick, nothing to make a fuss of. Just keep chatting, flick, flick. And then suddenly my left arm started to really ache. I thought, oh, I do not feel good here. I feel nauseous. And then the driver went, we're here then. So I undid the seatbelt, the door slid open, and I looked down. I thought, but we haven't stopped. I said to the driver, sorry, have we actually stopped? He said, yes, we've stopped. I said, are you sure? He said, I promise you we have stopped. Right. Now, here's the thing, Chelmsford, we hadn't stopped. Otherwise, why would the ground beneath me still be moving? But then I looked up and I saw the rest of the unit base, all the trailers and so forth, weren't moving. I mean, they were, but just in that sort of hazy way, like distant scenery on a hot day. So I thought, oh, well, everything's probably fine then, isn't it? Yeah, just because the ground beneath me appears to be moving at breakneck pace and everything else in my vision is turning into slowly swirling, brightly coloured dust, I'm sure on the whole everything's fine. One mustn't get these things out of proportion. Nevertheless, it actually took quite a lot of courage for me to step down from what seemed to me to be a moving vehicle. I had to cling to the bar at the side of the door and shout, "Keep it still!" to the driver, who, given that the engine was off and the handbrake was on, probably thought that I was being a bit needy. Because members of my profession can sometimes appear to be a little bit demanding. Jeremy Irons, for instance, won't eat anything from Morrison's. Jason Statham insists that all rooms are kept at room temperature. Kenneth Branagh famously can't work more than 10 feet away from a bucket. But once I finally got both feet on the ground, it meant I could take in the breathtaking and wholly reassuring view of previously solid objects just melting into one another. And then suddenly, from the midst of this maelstrom, emerging a young man with a terrified look on his face who said, "You look really dizzy." Now, this young man, it turned out, was a junior member of the production team called Phil, whose day, I think it's fair to say, was about to get worse. I said to him, "I need a doctor." I was panicking by this point. Sometimes I find it hard to distinguish between panic and the usual levels of heightened anxiety that are one of the many joys of the freelance lifestyle. When you see me laughing uncontrollably on Would I Lie to You, it's actually just the anguish rictus of a man impaled on the horns of a fight-or-flight dilemma, just sort of shitting it about the mortgage. Now, Phil very kindly led me towards a chair. He sat me down, and for some reason I took my shoes off, and then I absolutely no idea. And then he put a glass of water on a table next to me and ran off to get help. And I put my hand out towards the glass of water. I suddenly realised the chances of me actually getting hold of this glass of water were close to zero. You know, as if my hand was a fairground grabber in a service station. The glass of water was an unlicensed Minions toy. Possibly full of spikes and asbestos, but, you know, we've got to cut through some of these regulations if we're going to get Britain moving again, haven't we? Then Phil was back. He said, "The set medic is 8 minutes away." And I remember saying to him with great certainty, "That will be too long." Now, when I was about 11 or 12, I was messing around with some friends of mine at school, and I threw a ball from a snooker table down a corridor. Now, I realised the fact that I was attending a school with a snooker table perhaps marks this out as the more upmarket end of hooliganism. So I hurled that snooker ball, and with it, everything it represented. Now, the moment I let go of the snooker ball, I panicked. What had I done? A friend of mine was at the other end of the corridor. What if it hit him? Time stood still. Although when you're attending a small prep school in Berkshire, it's not moving terribly fast in the first place. Yeah, just a bit of observational comedy there to resonate with the small prep school in Berkshire crowd. Who, if I'm honest, often make up an uncomfortably large proportion of my audience. Now, my friend, he somehow managed to get through the door at the other end of the corridor and shut it behind him. In this door, though, there was a small rectangular glass window, and my friend was looking through the glass window at the snooker ball coming through the air towards him, and he was still looking through that little glass window at the moment the snooker ball bounced up and hit the pane of glass with the kind of thump, well, the kind of thump that a snooker ball hitting a pane of glass would make. Let's not overvalue the art of simile, Chelmsford. You have to do some of the work. Fortunately, it was wired glass. Imagine if it hadn't been. The what-ifs are unbearable. At best, it would have been a dark shadow hanging over the rest of my career, like the manslaughter conviction of Leslie Grantham. But I can still remember that crack as the resin ball bounced up and hit that pane of glass. And the moment that it captured, that sort of split second, a freeze frame of it going from being a neat rectangle to a mass of shattered fragments. Well, just after I said to poor Phil, "That will be too long," what happened to that little pane of glass happened to my entire field of vision, like a stained glass window erupting, just shards and shards of bright, bright colours everywhere. It was, imagine, like getting caught up in a terror attack in M&M World. I don't know what the aims of such a terror group would be, but when you consider their choice of target, they're hard not to like. Really, as a parent, it's just essentially fucking expensive pick and mix. But I can remember the colours and the shards just getting brighter and brighter. And then I can remember a light beyond the coloured shards getting brighter and whiter. And then I remember having two thoughts. Is this what death looks like? Why is it so beautiful? Next thing I saw, a bright blue sky, silhouetted against which were 4 people desperately trying to force me into the recovery position. Now, I can't remember any of this, but what I can remember, though, very clearly in the midst of this, was a lady's voice asking me my wife's name and number, and me realising that the call that the lady was about to make could be the last chance that I ever have to communicate with my wife, and this couldn't be wasted. So I said to her, please, can you tell her to put things away as soon as she's finished with them? Or clutter really does start to build up ridiculously quickly. Not really. What I said was to tell her that I love her very, very much, and then everything, and this is somewhat unimaginative of it, went black. The next time I came round, I was now lying on my back, my shoulder was aching, my head was really hurting, and a man was standing over me asking me, do you know why you're here? Well, it's a big question, isn't it? I imagine 1 or 2 of you are probably asking it of yourselves right now. Gosh, sort of thought there'd be more Balamory anecdotes. You sure this is an evening with Ellen Titchmarsh? It all depends on just how confused you are, and I'll be honest, it varies according to venue. But did I know why I was here? I looked down, I saw my clothes absolutely filthy, and the man asking me this question was a paramedic. At least he was dressed as a paramedic. Perhaps he was an actor too. Just had to find out if he'd paid for his own Haribo. He said, can you tell me what you've been doing today? Well, it sounds a bit unlikely when said out loud to a stranger, but I gave it a go. I said, oh, yes, not much to tell. Got up, slept badly. Unit-based trailer, Haribo. I won't go into it. It'll only wind you up. Makeup, costume, Ros, Northampton, first assistant director, Glasgow, director, Jenny, Midsummer, a little bit of light acting, people carrier, light flashing, somebody got me a chair, I took my shoes off, something reminded me of a snooker ball, but it'll take a long time to explain, and frankly, you'll wonder it was worth it. Lots of lights and lovely colours, people holding me down, darkness, and this. And this, I now realised, was an ambulance. He said, and what did you do last night? Did you take any drugs? I said, no, because I hadn't. I've never really been a drug sort of person. Not hard ones, at any rate. Whichever those are. I'm sure the dealer can advise. Talk you through them like a sommelier. Ketamine, sir. Not sure that's what I'd have with fish. Then he switched to more general knowledge. What's the date? Who's the Prime Minister? What was the name of the American president who got shot? The American president who got shot? When did this guy do his training? Ridiculous question to ask, because there are 6 potential answers. Well, there were in 2021. Since I started performing this show, that number has now risen to 7. But correlation is not causation. I was honestly barely involved in the project. Really, what I ought to have tried to do was narrow it down by asking if he meant by pistol, rifle, or musket. What happened next was hazy. I can remember waking up again in the ambulance, outside A&E, they told me. And then I remember waking up actually in A&E and in a bed, not a corridor. So either I was extremely high priority or I'd been asleep for several weeks. Again, lots of doctors and nurses wanted to know the date and who the Prime Minister was. Again, a lot of people who seem to have an interest in the history of political assassinations in the United States. Eventually I heard a ping on my phone. It was a text message from my wife asking me to ring her as soon as I could. So I did. She wanted to know the date and who the Prime Minister was. No, she wanted to know how I was, because not long ago she'd been on a bus to Hereford with 4 of our children. I'm not sure where the other one was. Probably down Paddy Power with the family credit card. When a nice lady had rung her and told her that her husband was on his way to hospital. Now, my wife is a very calm lady. She doesn't always put things away as soon as she's finished with them. This, as I've often tried to explain, does lead to a somewhat unnecessarily rapid build-up of clutter, but she's very calm, so she rises above the clutter and, indeed, the rage of other people desperately trying to explain how hard it is to find the last remaining key to the Volkswagen Polo if it's been left underneath a waffle iron or a guinea pig. I mean, I would not have been calm if I'd been the one in her situation. I mean, frankly, just getting 4 of the children out of the house and onto a bus would already have left me on the brink of apoplexy. Possibly ending with me getting the driver in a headlock and demanding to know why the family rider ticket only included 2 children, and could Hereford buses perhaps be more inclusive of people who have married into Catholicism? Really does seem to be some sort of Anglican stronghold. I think our conversation was interrupted by someone telling me I had to go for a scan. I can't be sure, but next time I came round I was back on the bay at A&E, and a doctor was now standing over me, asking me, "Do you know why you're here?" I really cannot believe that the doctors in these places are forced to ask the patients to do quite so much of the diagnostics heavy lifting for themselves. I can only assume it's a situation symptomatic of a system stretched at the point of near collapse by the arrival of a global pandemic for which we were hopelessly underprepared at a time when there's been chronic underfunding for years, but that's really just idle speculation. Anyway, he said, "Let me explain." He said, "What you had today, Miles, was something called a brain seizure. Do you know what that means, Miles? It's essentially an electrical storm inside your head." Now, I had seen an electrical storm before. I saw an amazing one once in Italy. We were on holiday, and it was a very hot day, but there was a lot of moisture about, mainly just me sweating Montepulciano. And then that evening in the sky, it suddenly just kicked off. I can remember standing out in the garden, looking out over the hills, the crackling, the fizzing, the flashing. Not many things look violent and beautiful at the same time. Perhaps Roy Keane? In his absolute prime. In both cases, a reminder of what astonishing things nature's capable of. But I'd seen an electrical storm. If I'd had one of those inside me, no wonder my head was hurting so much. I said, "Well, what's caused that then?" He said, "Well, we've had a scan of your brain, just a CT one, and there seems to be some sort of growth in there." I said, "What, like a tumour?" "Yeah. Yes, it's probably been there a very long time, growing very, very slowly. So what happened today could have happened at any time." He said, "I'll show you, if you like." And he got out his mobile. On it there was a photograph he'd taken of the scan. He pointed to this little sphere, quite dark. He said, "That shouldn't be there." I said, "Well, what can be done about that?" He said, "We're not sure at the moment. We have to do a few more tests on it. I have to say it doesn't look too bad." Now, as the layperson in this conversation, I have to say I'm not quite sure what the fuck "not too bad" means, frankly. Presumably, if you're a doctor, "not too bad" can be very relative, can't it? It could mean we are going to have to bury you in something very soon, but it won't necessarily have to be lead-lined. He said, "You'll have to stop driving immediately for a year." Okay, that's fine. That's 12 months bereft of parallel parking-induced panic attacks. He said, "You're also going to have to go on some anti-seizure medication for a while to stop this sort of thing happening again." "Can't drive for a year." "No question. Some tablets for a while." "Yes, I have a question. My question, can I drink?" Fastest response I'd made to anything in the last 24 hours, even before the seizure, probably. "Can I drink?" "What, alcohol?" "No, sweat from a donkey's back, yes." "Alcohol? Oh, no, I wouldn't have thought so. No, you need to avoid anything that could raise the risk if you're having further seizures. Drink is one of these things, another is stress, another is anger." How many of my treasured pastimes is this man going to ruthlessly snatch away from me? Take away drink, stress and anger. All I'm left with is rolling my eyes at 4x4s with their engines idly and very occasionally posting on Mumsnet under the name Tennis Lady. I'll tell you this much about Tennis Lady. She's not afraid of an online brouhaha. She has very fixed views about what constitutes appropriate yoga wear. Some of which I happen to agree with. Some of the things she thinks I find genuinely shocking. Now, If a friend tells you that you need to stop drinking, your immediate instinctive response, who the fuck does this meddlesome little shit think he is? Just because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, why shouldn't we form a syndicate to buy a greyhound? Yeah. I'll tell you who's not getting a slice of the action. Mister, why don't you put your trousers back on? Over there. But when it's a doctor saying it, bloody hell, because drinking, not to put too fine a point on things, Chelmsford, drinking it's very much the point of life, isn't it? I just happen to think that drinking goes extremely well with all activities, behaviours and thoughts. I've never really been a drinker particularly concerned with quality. I'm a quantity sort of a person. I think you can get too hung up, can't you, on things like flavours. If a friend tells you need to stop drinking, that's just an opinion. That's all that's happened there. You probably hadn't asked them in the first place. It could well be erroneous, couldn't it? But if you're lying in a hospital bed and somebody in a white coat tells you to just stop, you think, OK, I better had. I think it's probably the white coat that does it for me. I think I'll do pretty much anything that I'm told to by somebody wearing a white coat. It has to be a doctor's white coat, obviously, not one that says Jenkins & Co., a family butcher. Braces on the breast pocket. If that's the case, I won't listen for too long to their advice about hemorrhoids. Well, I'll listen, obviously. I just won't necessarily act on it. Not until I'm safely home and I've repositioned a couple of mirrors. Perhaps spread out some old towels. Yeah, they just go eventually, don't they, towels? Yeah. Sad. I think it's the thread count. So I had to stop drinking. A voyage of discovery. Honestly, I genuinely thought the beds shat themselves. No. The other thing the doctor said was, obviously we are going to have to do an MRI scan on your brain, so we know what that growth definitely is. It looks benign, but it could be malignant. At some point I then got moved to a ward on my own, which was briefly very pleasant, until I thought, hang on, is a ward on my own a good thing? Is it perhaps a very, very bad thing? Is it so there's enough space for a whole team of doctors and nurses to fit around the bed? Is it so there's enough space for a priest to swing the incense around? Maybe what's going to happen to me is so horrific they don't want any other patients to witness it in case they sue for trauma. At some point, someone came and collected me for the MRI scan, so I get put into a wheelchair, taken off down to the imaging unit. Now, the MRI scanner is the one when they slide you into this enormous, noisy, white tube. And what it is, an MRI scanner, in essence, is a really big magnet. And because it's a magnet, that is why they have to ask you before they shunt you into the thing if you've definitely remembered to remove all items of body jewellery. And do you know, Chelmsford, I was able to assure them with no checking necessary that I've quite definitely remembered to remove all items of body jewellery, thank you. I think at first glance they should have been able to tell I'm not really a nipple ring sort of a chap. In my 20s, I briefly experimented with a pair of vast antique door knockers, and actually the people at those parties told me they were beautiful, but goodness, they were heavy. And, Christ, I was getting through the brasso. Eventually, a door opened, and it wasn't somebody delivering me 2 pieces of toast and not quite enough marmalade to cover them. I realise this is the most chronic of the shortages that the health service is currently facing. If we only focus on the big things, we'll never achieve lasting change. What I'm saying is, I think, look after the marmalade, presumably the dialysis machines will look after themselves. Can that be the system? No, it was a doctor with the results of my MRI scan. It's benign, he said. We thought it was, and it is. Gosh, the relief. He said, what you've got is something called a meningioma. They're generally benign. They're formed in the lining between the brain and the skull, which means that they are really easy for us to get to. Really? Well, yes, once we've opened up your skull. Oh, I see, like everything, it's all about just getting into the bloody packaging, isn't it? I normally rely on sharp scissors and brute force. It's not a tip I pass on. He says, oh, yeah, once we've opened up your skull, you could pop one of these out with an ice cream scoop. It's not fucking hell. But nevertheless, I'm lying there thinking, actually, in the circumstances, this is really good news. But then he says, of course, we do need to do a CT scan on the rest of your body now, just to check that this isn't a little bit of a different tumour somewhere else that has spread to your brain. So more time waiting to be collected, more time being wheeled off, having scans, more time waiting for results. And when the news comes, it is good. I'm extremely fortunate. There is nothing anywhere else I can go home. But before I can go home, I get a call on my mobile from an unknown number. And this voice says, "Is that Miles Jupp?" I said, "The actor, writer, comedian, author, and inevitably podcaster it is. To whom am I speaking?" And then a man introduced himself to me in a way that is at once impressive and deeply terrifying. He said, "Hello, Miles. My name's Daniel Bucknell, and I'm going to be your brain surgeon." Now, luckily, he had a very calm voice and a confident manner, because otherwise that precise form of words has a very slight air of stars in their eyes about it. I mean, you want them to be confident, I think, a brain surgeon. I think confidence is a very useful quality in a brain surgeon, but it's a very fine line these people have to tread. You want confidence. You don't want overconfidence, do you? You don't want, "Hello, yeah, the rumours are true. Muggins here is going to be doing your bloody brain surgery." "Listen, fella, you've not got a thing to worry about. I've smashed out loads of these dickheads. All I've got to do, open you up, get in there, cut the bastard out, quick squirt of the hand sand, then out for golf with the lads. Stella. On the flip side, you don't want someone that seems to be completely overwhelmed by the very idea of the thing, do you? Hello, is that Miles? Right, I've just had an email. Yeah, apparently I've got to do your brain surgeries. Oh, as if I don't have enough on my plate already. I mean, it is a seemingly endless to-do list. This really could be the one that breaks me. Listen, have they told you where we're doing it? Please don't say a hospital. Everything medical triggers me. Daniel, it has to be said, he got the balance absolutely right. "Hello, I'm going to be your brain surgeon." He didn't know when the operation could be. It could be 6 weeks away. It could easily be longer. All I could do for now, he said, "Go home. Take it easy." So about 3.5 hours later, I stepped through my front door and into the arms of my wife, who held me as I wept and wept and wept. Because there was clutter. Everywhere. I've only been gone 3 days. Looks like you've had the fucking Mansons round. Now, we were meant to be going away a couple of days later, and the doctors, they said it was fine to go away on a little trip. While I was there, though, I got an email on my phone from the surgeon telling me, actually, I would be able to have the operation I needed in less than a fortnight, which is very unexpected. But then it turned out that the reason I could have the operation in about a fortnight was that they'd had a cancellation. Now, there don't seem to me to be too many reasons why you would choose to cancel urgently needed brain surgery unless it was suddenly no longer considered urgent. And you have thoughts like that, it's extremely hard not to just stand and stare out of the kitchen window at nothing for a very long time. Still, in my line of work, it's always lovely to have a date in the diary. I mean, I say date in the diary. Once you've been given the date that you're undergoing major brain surgery, I have to say it's not a date that you find particularly hard to remember. You're not looking at the kitchen calendar, "Oh, bloody hell, I've got brain surgery on Wednesday." Well, that completely slipped my tumour-adorned mind. Maybe that isn't a good day to get the carpets done. God, I'd forget my head if it wasn't about to be sawn open and rummaged about. But we could tell a few of the people who needed to know when the operation would be, and I spoke with my parents. They offered their house as a place for me to go to after the operation to convalesce. And one day the following week, my wife and I, we had a long FaceTime conversation with the surgeon, and he was still calm. In fact, his exact words were that he was now fresh out of rehab and keen to find a way back into the business. No, he was calm. But he was also realistic. The growth, he said, it was right next to a very big and, wouldn't you believe it, important vein that they needed to avoid damaging, and it was also next to a big and important nerve that they needed to avoid damaging, as that could affect my vision or my ability to move the left-hand side of my body, which had all sorts of terrifying implications, because that's my smoking hand. He said there was a 5% chance of that happening to me, much bigger than the 2% chance there would be of me dying, although he did make a point of stressing that wasn't an outcome he was particularly striving for. Anyway, he said, "Do you have any questions?" I said, "I do, actually. Yes, I do. My parents have suggested that I go to their house to convalesce after the operation. Did he think that would be a good idea?" And he said, "No." I said, "Have you met them?" He said, "No, they'll just mollycoddle you, won't they? They'll walk on tiptoes. They won't interrupt you." Clearly, he hasn't met my parents. Anyway, why worry? I thought about where to convalesce. I can be worrying about surviving the operation in the first place, thank you. I mean, I worried all the time. I mean, every morning I would wake up wide awake. I'd be wide awake by 3. So I started taking myself off through to the sitting room, and I'd sit there and read, just put my head somewhere else. And then one morning, I woke up at 3 and I went through to the sitting room and I didn't read. Instead, I got out some paper and a pen and I wrote a letter. I wrote the letter that would only really need to be read if it all went wrong, because I thought if the worst came to the worst, it was very important that I'd taken the time to put my thoughts in order, commit those thoughts to paper. Hard as it would be for me to write, hard as it would be for others to read. But in the cool stillness of the morning, I took up my pen to tell certain of my professional colleagues exactly what I think of them. Not really, although well, it would be the ones you're thinking of. Largely the same for everyone. I just wanted to make things easier for the people that I love in a purely practical way. That's all I can offer. Losing someone, of course it isn't. It can't be easy. Having to sort all of their shit out afterwards must just make it even worse. I doubt anyone's ever said, oh, the grief was unbearable. But what really helped us through it was that he'd left behind loads of admin. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the experience of ringing up to try and change the name on a Virgin Media account is the sort of ordeal that actually puts bereavement into some kind of perspective. But that's what the first third of the letter was. Where do we keep such and such? Who to phone about such and such? What is such and such? Really the sort of information that you'd leave somebody that was house-sitting. So hard not to finish with. And above all, have a good time. And then I sat back, I had a good old chew on my biro, and I wrote down some plans for my funeral. I chose some music and hymns, and readings. I chose who would deliver my eulogy. I chose who would carry my coffin. Some I chose for their long-standing friendship. Others, frankly, for their upper body strength. When you go to an actor's funeral, you quite often see some people for whom carrying a coffin is the first manual labour they've done in their entire lives. It really does put the rest of the congregation on edge. Keen to avoid that. I also specifically requested a couple of people that I do not get on with, just to give them a bit of a dilemma. Fuckers. I asked for a wicker casket. I didn't want something big and shiny. I thought that would be like being carried out in a 4x4. I wanted the sort of coffin that wouldn't seem ostentatious if you happened to bring it with you on the school run. Cremation afterwards, just a sort of cheeky little one. Then some drinks, nibbles, and if possible, a quiet and awkward dispersal of the guests. I asked for my ashes to be scattered in 2 different places, each chosen to create maximum disruption. Part of me over the surface of the local ice rink. The rest flung directly into the eyes of my local MP. Ideally during a photo op. The final third of the note was a love letter to my wife and to my children. And then as a PS, a further reminder to them to put things away as soon as they finish them, including, so as not to be a hypocrite, me. Now, I imagine by this point in the evening you've probably got quite a few questions gnawing away at you, but I imagine the biggest question gnawing away at you, Chelmsford, is does he survive the operation? Well, I'm afraid I always like to reach the midpoint of the show on a bit of a cliffhanger. Now, where were we? I know where I was. I was about to have major brain surgery during a pandemic, which added a certain frisson to the whole thing, because prior to going into hospital for the operation, I had to go and have a PCR test, always vastly unpleasant, although it did occur to me that if I stuck the swab up far enough and gave a really good tug, you know, might be able to skip surgery altogether. A few days later, I'm off to London to Charing Cross Hospital to have the operation. They told me that I had to have the operation in London rather than where I live in South Wales. So I'm just glad that brain surgery isn't one of the increasing numbers of public services that are now inexplicably carried out in W.H. Smiths. The nurse shows me up to the ward. There's 6 beds on our ward. There's 1 empty bed, my bed, which is next to a window that's looking out over the River Thames. So I sit on the bed and I exchange a few nods with the other patients, those that are awake. Some, like me, are waiting for their operations. Others are bandaged after them. The man in the bed next to me doesn't wake up all the time I'm there. But here we all are. We're all in the same boat. And a nurse comes over and explains to me that before anything else happens, I need to do 2 more swabs. Another COVID one and MRSA. Do you know, in the giddy excitement of the pandemic, I'd clean forgotten all about the ongoing threat of MRSA. I mean, gosh, when she said those letters, I felt almost nostalgic. It was like happening on an HMV, or, you know, bumping into Lembit Opic, you know. She said, have you done these swabs before? I said, I've done a lot of COVID ones. I've not done an MRSA. She said, oh, well, MRSA, you just need to rub your crotch and your bottom. Sorry, just rub my bottom. No, you need to rub the swab in your bottom. Now, I think we all know, don't we, Chelmsford, that in this particular scenario, in actually means up, doesn't it? Well, depending on the angle that your body is at when you commence this voyage of indignity. If I start in a low crouch, and already that sounds like a wise idea, that would be up, wouldn't it? Were I to do it whilst performing one of my frequent handstands, that would be down. Perhaps you think I'm putting too much thought into this. I'd argue no amount of thought's too much by just suddenly inserting something into your bottom, both in terms of the hows and the whats, the whys, the wheres. I said, well, shall I go and do this in the bathroom? She says, no need at all. No need at all. And what she does, she draws this sort of thin blue curtain sort of all around me in the bed. She draws the curtain around, she heads off, so I'm sort of behind the curtain thinking, well, that's all right, I suppose. It's enough to preserve my mystique. The other patients won't be able to see me, even if they can hear me, but presumably if I do these swabs in such a way that other people can hear me, I'm doing them wrong. Perhaps just with more gusto than is medically necessary. So I do the COVID one first, I pop it in the test tube, and then it's time for the good old MRSA. Now, when she said to me, rub my crotch, I assume what she must mean is just give the thing a good old swipe around the groin area. Just take it on a proper ramble, why don't you? You know, into a couple of creases, but not any holes. A day trip, not a holiday. This achieved to my satisfaction, I lower my trousers further to commence phase 2. But as I'm lowering my trousers, it occurs to me, although I ascertained that the swab had to go up my bottom, I had forgotten, presumably in my excitement, to ask just how far. Now, the swab, it must have been about 12 centimetres, right? So already I know what the upper limit would be. You know, I'm not expecting to go elbow deep with all James Herriot on it, but I want to know what the lower limit would be, but I don't really fancy shouting over the curtains for clarification. Sorry, how far up my arse do you want this? I mean, anyone could answer back. I mean, they might be a medical professional, could be a lunatic. Could be a showbiz rival who snuck onto the ward in the hope of levelling a score, or worse, how far up my arse do you want this? Could be the first words that another patient hears when they come round from their operation. They might think, oh, I can't handle this. I'm just going to go back into that tunnel and head towards the light. But then I remember that phrase. I must have read it countless times on the side of lateral flow tests. Insert the swab gently into one nostril until you find resistance. So I think, well, presumably it's like for like. You know, in this case, for one nostril, read one's rectum. In both cases, if you feel it at the back of the throat, you have gone... You've gone too far, haven't you, Chelmsford? So I squat down and I begin, quite tentatively at first, expecting resistance really at any moment. But goodness, there wasn't much really. I mean, it's astonishing how little of a fight I seem to be putting up. You know, up and up and up it seems to want to go. I think, gosh, if this goes any further, I might never see it again. Dropping your car keys down a manhole. These are the thoughts going through my head as the swab continued its leisurely journey up my back passage with no obvious destination in sight, when at that exact moment a completely different nurse whips back the curtains and says, "Do you fancy some bangers and mash?" My trousers are fully dropped. I'm squatting down, I'm reaching around. I must have about 10 centimetres of swab up me, and frankly not that firm a grip on the end of it. Nevertheless, I hear myself saying, I would absolutely love a plate of bangers and mash. I mean, you like bangers and mash, you like bangers and mash, don't you? She, despite the grotesque tableau in front of her, didn't bat an eyelid, which I think is why I stayed in that position as we began to discuss the condiments on offer. Eventually plumped for ketchup and mustard. Oh, life isn't a rehearsal. She disappears, and an occupational therapist comes to see me. Now, the occupational therapist, she needs to do some tests on me to see how well my brain is working at the moment. So she tests my vision first, tests how long it takes me to count different numbers of dots, how many adjectives beginning with B can I name in 30 seconds, a bit of general knowledge, some trivia, some dates. What's the name of the American president who got shot? By this point, I've stopped being a smart-ass and I've just given the answer they presumably want, of William McKinley. She says she'll come back again after the operation to see if I am different. And we agree that if when she comes back I start talking loudly about how much I now love golf, she will give me some whiskey and a revolver and tells me I have to do the decent thing for the greater good. She disappears and an anaesthetist comes to see me. Now, I'd never met an occupational therapist before, but I had met an anaesthetist at my children's primary school. One of the other parents, one of the dads, was an anaesthetist, and they'd come round to our house one Boxing Day, I think, for drinks, and I was chatting away to him about him being an anaesthetist, and he asked what I do, and I said, I do comedy. And the anaesthetist, I mean, instantly, he just seemed absolutely terrified about just the idea of doing this as a job. He was saying, the anaesthetist, he said, I mean, what I can't understand, sometimes you must be standing in front of an audience, and you do a joke, and they don't laugh. I cannot imagine how that must feel. I said to the anaesthetist, well, presumably when you're at work, sometimes you just lose one, do you? Just give everyone a freshen up. We did not say much. He looked quite reflective. When they'd gone, I said to my wife, I might have said something a bit stupid to Dave. And she said, what was it? And I told her, and she didn't say much. She really looked quite reflective. I mean, I thought, in a way, it's sort of just about justifiable, isn't it? In both cases, it's a hazard of the working environment. You don't want it to happen too often. If word gets around it's happening all the time, you're not going to get as many gigs, are you? I mean, goodness knows what Dave must have thought when he got behind the wheel of his car. Do you know how important that cunt thinks his job is? I have to bury my mistakes. If he makes mistakes at work, the worst that happens is people decide they prefer Josh Whittaker. But as I was talking to the anaesthetist, I realised there was something about anaesthetics I've always completely misunderstood, which is the fact that the anaesthetist is there with the patient and the surgery team for the entire duration of the operation. I didn't realise this. I always thought, and this is really stupid of me, I thought what happened essentially was the anaesthetist sort of sized you up, asked the surgeon roughly how long they needed you out for, did a bit of mental maths, gave you a load of drugs, and then just sort of fucked off until it was time for the operation. You know, like drugging a guard dog in a film. Inevitably, from time to time, people would start coming around before the end of the operation. They'd have to ring Steve. Poor Steve, he's near the front of the queue in Costa by now. Oh, God, is he? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Well, clearly I didn't give him quite as much as he needs. Right, when you say stirring, how much is he stirring? I don't need it stirring. I'm just on the phone to a colleague, thank you. Yes, please, cinnamon, thank you. Well, yeah, Mike, I know you've got hands full of scalpels. Going to get anything while I'm here? I know they only do those at Christmas, apparently. I've asked, yeah. What's that? Oh, double espresso. Treat yourself. Won't make your hands shake any more than they do already. Stella. He disappears. Another doctor comes to see me, and this doctor starts to shave hair off my hair, just shaves clumps of hair off and starts attaching these sort of plastic circular things to my head. They look like those sort of round anti-shoplifting devices, you know, the ones that they have in the supermarket in, I don't know, spirits and electrical items, shaving equipment, sometimes baby milk. Yeah, I think if people need to steal baby milk, I think what you do is you let them steal baby milk, don't you, frankly? With the caveat, obviously, by need, I mean if it is for a baby, not to sort of grit a path with, or as a coffee mate substitute. Although it works, I happen to know. Crazy 72 hours after a home birth. I think Aptamil is probably all right for tradespeople, but Cowingate if you've guests. Aptamil's just a bit more session, isn't it? No. I don't sleep well. It's very hard to get off to sleep. I'm nervous, I'm frightened, and it's very warm in there, incredibly warm. I mean, presumably for the benefit of the older patients, or who knows, perhaps some of the sisters have started a weed farm. Who would blame them? But I do get off to sleep somehow. When I wake up, it is to the news that there has been an emergency on our part of the hospital. Everyone has to go and attend to the emergency, so all of our operations have to be put back. Now, I was going to be first up, 8 o'clock in the morning, trap 1, right? I can't be now, I have to be. All we can do is wait. I'm ready, but I just wait and read and read and wait and wait and read from 8 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, when someone suddenly appears at the bedside and says, "It's time." So I mark my place in the book that I'm reading and I put it down on the bedside table. And I wonder just for a moment if I'll ever open it again. Now, I'm expecting a trolley, but what I don't realise is that these days the bed itself is the trolley. There's no longer that business of being slid from one thing to another on a kind of giant plasterer's tool. It's just sort of breaks off and whoosh, Fantastic way of getting reluctant teenagers to the breakfast table. And we leave the comfort of the ward. Instantly, it gets a bit scarier. The porter has to go back onto the ward to collect my notes, and I'm momentarily left on my own on the landing. Suddenly, these 2 men appear at the end of the corridor. They seem quite drunk to me. They've not got masks on or anything. They're just wandering around looking for someone, and they read out all the signs they go past. And as they get past our ward, one of them goes, "Neurosurgery, bloody hell!" And then they walk off laughing. In retrospect, I am certain they were doctors. And we get into the lift down to the surgery zone. It's not called the surgery zone, obviously, but I'm from the original Crystal Maze generation. So it's a lot easier for us if everything's just divvied up into zones, isn't it? Surgery, maternity, fracture clinic, Aztec. Get out, get out, get out! Just leave him, he's slow. But then I then get to experience in real life that shot from the medical dramas, the patient's point of view of the ceiling as you're wheeled along the corridor on the way to the operating theatre. Real life, it's actually quite cool. There's a sense of drama and importance, plus, of course, an additional opportunity, as one so often has these days, to glance at something you think you're paying for and think, but look at the fucking state of that, right? And then before the operating theatre, you're taken into a sort of holding bay. It's incredibly busy in there. There's a lot of people in there, either people who are professionally engaged in the business of performing brain surgery or people who are about to have brain surgery performed upon them. And in an ideal world, everyone in that room knows which of those groups they belong to. Daniel, one of my surgeons, he comes over, he shakes my hand, he introduces me to another gentleman, a professor, he'll be the other surgeon. He comes over, he shakes my hand, he says, "I'm so sorry that we haven't met before in person. How are you?" I think, well, please tell me he's read the fucking notes. No, he's delightful. We've spoken on the phone. He's lovely. He's got the correct number of hands, no eye patch. I'm lying on my back, and looming over me in their blue scrubs and masks are the 2 people who'll be doing brain surgery on me for more than 4 hours. Daniel says, "How do you feel?" And I say, I feel like I'm in the right place. He says, "You are. We have done quite a few of these. Anyway, good luck." And they head off, and they leave me in the hands of the anaesthetist, who, now that he's in his special place, seems to be a bit of a party boy, giving off the impression that rendering people unconscious is him living his best life. He and his team, they're cracking on with stuff. They put on some music, really loud music that is absolutely not to my taste. The sort of music I normally only hear if I accidentally wander into the wrong trouser shop. I think, well, thank God I'm going to be unconscious in a few moments. In a few moments, I really am. A countdown begins, but you don't hear it end. I'm out. Eventually, and if you've been paying any sort of attention, you will probably have guessed this by now. I came round. Thank you. I mean, the alternative, of course, is that we all died. This is heaven, yeah. What a surprise here in Chelmsford, goodness, yes. Well, why not? Why not? Perhaps more vape shops than I was expecting, but otherwise... Otherwise, I think we can be satisfied. It's It's about 6 hours later, I'm in the recovery room. Somebody, I'm not sure who, tells me it's gone well. But at that point, I just feel drowsy. I mean, so drowsy. I'm not sure it's because I've been anaesthetised for 6 hours to undergo major brain surgery, or if I've accidentally spent 10 minutes in a windowless TK Maxx at the end of a long bank holiday. Just horrific. Next time I come round, I realise I'm back on my bay in the ward, and after a while I realise my book is still sitting there on the bedside table. So after a while, I pick it up quite nervously, and I open it up, and I realise that despite having just had brain surgery, I still know exactly where I am in the book, who the characters are, what they're up to. It's fantastic. And then I double-check with myself, and I definitely still don't like golf. Apparently, doctors tell me one of the purest signs of cognitive function that there is. But I do feel tired. I mean, ludicrously tired. It's not fair, is it? I'm not the one who's done any of the actual work, am I? It's like going home to your wife who spent the day single-handedly looking after 5 children and trying to explain how exhausting it is to record an episode of 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown. You know? It's not just mindless banter. There are anagrams. I sort of check myself over. I've got a big bandage on the back of my head. And then I realise after a while there's a tube coming out of the back of me that seems to be dispensing what can only be leftover blood from my skull and sending it down into this enormous see-through plastic sphere with a handle. I've never seen anything like it. An item so odd it looks like one of the random objects passed to Charles during the coronation, you know. But I'm able to speak to my wife. I message a few other people. That night, though, I really do sleep. Next morning, when I wake up, first thing that happens is someone comes to the bedside and explains to me that I've had a catheter fitted. Now, this means, they tell me, that I do not need to get out of bed if I need to go for a wee. It is fabulously decadent. Incredibly useful for going to see long films at the cinema. I'll have 1 ticket for Oppenheimer, please. And a really big Coke. Daniel, one of the surgeons, comes up to see me. Goodness knows how many operations they've done since mine. These people, they're superheroes. He tells me they've nearly got all of it. There's a little tiny piece left in, but it was next to something big and important. And discretion is the better part of valour in these instances. But what has been removed, that'll be tested. In a few weeks' time, I'll find out if what is left inside me is likely to grow again. But he sounds upbeat. But that day, that Thursday, that is a busy old day. A lot of people come up to the ward, various bits of kit get plugged in, various tests are done on me, various things get removed. But the most nerve-wracking removal, by a considerable margin, your friend and mine, the catheter. Now, a catheter, perhaps you know, I hope you don't, frankly, it's this little instrument that is inserted into your urethra, through which we can then flow along a tube into a sort of disposal bag, so this little device gets inserted up or down, or I mean, it depends on the angle that your penis is at when they perform the procedure. Sensibly, they do it while you're unconscious to prevent you trying to reason with them about the whole thing. How then do they get the thing up there without the risk of leakage? An excellent question. Because, thank you for asking, because it needs to fit snugly, doesn't it? Otherwise it would just be like sticking your thumb over the end of a hose. Well, it would have been in my 20s. A bit more of a languid trickle these days. Gentle overflow from a gutter partially blocked with leaves. Yet more time out of the day. Well, it's very clever. They're flexible. So what they do, they insert it and then they very gently just inflate it. So imagine if you had a length of drain pipe, you got a brand new balloon, fed it up through the bottom, blew it up, and once it was inflated, it would sit snugly against the inner walls of the drain pipe, make a little squeaky noise if you tried to pull it out again. As one imagines would I. So in order to get this balloon out without hurting your drain pipe, it first of all has to be deflated. Now, this is all explained to me in honestly simpler terms by the nurse, who has been charged with plucking or gently removing the item from me. She tells me that it'll be deflated and then gently removed. And what she also tells me, Chelmsford, is that it won't hurt. Well, Either I have an unusually narrow urethra, right? Not a phrase I hear myself using often, even in anger. Either I have an unusually narrow urethra, a phrase I'm thinking of having printed on tea towels. See if I can't shift a few units in the foyer. Either I have an unusually narrow urethra, or that thing about it not hurting was a little bit of a fib to help her get through her job without having to listen to me begging for mercy. Perhaps she likes a prank. Perhaps I'd done something to annoy her. Perhaps it's just a bloody satisfying part of the job. I mean, God knows you have to mop up a lot of unpleasant stuff. I imagine you have to take your jollies where you can, don't you? Just go home with a spring in your step and a sparkle in your eye, and your other half says, oh, someone's removed a few catheters today. By crikey. It didn't quite make the noise of a stubborn cork being finally removed from a bottle, but even if it had done, it would have been drowned out by the noise that I uttered, even if I had the vocal cords of a seal. And then I knelt bare-legged on a block of studs-up Lego that I had repeatedly asked somebody to tidy. I would struggle to recreate the sound that I made that day. I made a sound, it must have made birds fall from the trees, turn lush pastures to desert. Hundreds of miles away, a blue whale probably pricked up its ears and changed direction in the hope of mating with me. I made a noise so loud and piercing it might have made my children look up from YouTube and go, did you just say something? The nurse says, all right. I'm fine. Thank you. I will never forget you. But it's over, it means it's done. I'm free if I get out of bed carefully, and as long as I always remember to bring the see-through sphere of my own blood along with me, like an old railway lantern. I'm free to walk slowly across the ward, lock myself in the bathroom and do a piss that burns like hell itself. I do know that this is progress. Above the basin in there's a mirror, and it means I get to see my reflection for the first time since the operation. So I look at myself, a bandage on the back of my head. My face is quite puffy, but it's always quite puffy. All right. Completely fair. I mean, the amazing thing to me at this point is I'm standing there looking at myself alive, given what they've done. I mean, they put me to sleep, they've opened me up, they've cut something out, put me back together again, and here I am. But then suddenly I realise some of the things that I can see inside the mirror, I can't see outside the mirror. If I put my hand here, I can see it in the mirror, I just can't see it where it actually is. I've lost some of my peripheral vision, I'm blinkered, and I don't know if that's temporary or just how I'll be now, effectively a very expensively educated shire horse. Minus the work ethic. But me and my lantern, we limp back to the bed. I want to rest, I can't rest. It turns out to be an incredibly busy day. A lot of people come up to the ward and come over to my bed and introduce themselves to me as having been members of the surgery team. I mean, a lot of people, a suspiciously large number of people, frankly. I don't know what the hell could have been going on down there. It must have been an absolute mob. I end up just sort of nodding politely and thanking them for coming, like an exhausted mother of the bride who's fed up with receiving compliments on her hat and just wants to get to the bar and stick a fucking optic in her mouth. Yeah, it's a very special day. Up to the brim, please. No mixers, no fucking ice. And my parents come to visit that day. Now, because of the slightly complex nature of the COVID rules, it turns out only one of them is allowed onto the ward itself, and my parents decide that will be my father. He comes onto the ward. Because of the complex nature of the COVID rules, it does seem to me that there's nothing preventing me actively, of my own volition. I decide to go down the corridor, out through the double doors, onto the landing and see my mother as well, and so I do. I don't know if that was allowed. All I can say is that I was not advised that I could not do that. And I was, I believed, at all times following the spirit of the guidelines. But my mother, she didn't think she'd be able to see me, so she wasn't expecting to. She didn't look up when I came out through the double doors, and that meant that I got to see her before she saw me, just sitting on her own in a chair in the hospital corridor. And now, whenever I hear about a parent worrying about their ill child, I picture that look on my mother's face, just mindlessly scrolling through TikTok. The other thing I remember that day, every time a nurse came anywhere near the end of my bed, they'd say, have you moved your bowels yet, Mr. Jupp? I've not actually, no, but thank you for asking. Have you moved your bowels yet, Mr. Jupp? No, still no. I'm afraid no news. Have you moved your bowels yet, Mr. Jupp? I'm so sorry. The more they asked, the more disappointed they became by the answer. Have you moved your bowels yet, Mr. Jupp? I don't know if you've ever found yourself stuck on the A303 while 5 children take it in turns to ask if you can see somewhere to buy an ice cream. It was basically a rectal version of that, you know. Have you moved your bowels yet, Mr. Jupp? To extend the ice cream metaphor. No, I still seem to be some 30 congested miles short of the chiller cabinet at Barton Stacey Services. Thank you. Have you moved your bowels yet, Mr. Jupp? Have you moved your bowels? Oh, my God, the incessant pressure. It's not as if they do anything to help you, like give you a black coffee and a Marlboro Light. It is just questions. Have you moved your bowels yet, Mr. Jupp? Look, I can understand your fear of missing out. Can I just promise you, as soon as I take a dump, you will be the first person that I share this good news with. I will think of you as my next of fecal kin. Well, eventually, to my relief and their delight, it happened. And oh, my goodness, the celebrations, the dancing in the corridors, the "We Heard You Just Shat" card, signed by all of the nursing staff. I imagine there were deliveries on the maternity ward that day, greeted with less excitement. Though in both cases, a lot of polite well-wishers inquiring about the weight. Next morning, I got another visit from the occupational therapist. She needs to do the same tests on me that she'd done before the operation, so she tests my vision first. It isn't great. When I have to count the different numbers of dots, it just takes a lot longer. I don't always get it right. I'm not sure how many adjectives beginning with B I could name in 30 seconds. Not many, but then the only word beginning with B in my head now seemed to be bowels. And we moved on to some general knowledge, some trivia, some dates, her final question. What was the name of the American president who got shot? So I just smiled back at her and I put my hand very gently on hers and I said, look, I know why you keep asking me this. I know you're trying to break me. But if you think that after 60 years I'm going to rat out my buddies on the bureau, tell you what I was up to that afternoon on the grassy knoll, you're going to go the same way as everyone else who didn't just stick to the plan and keep their goddamn mouth shut. Just a bit of fun for fans of the Kevin Costner film there. Which I would recommend if you have 3 hours to kill and access to a catheter. She takes me out into the corridor, tests if I can manage stairs. What am I like with obstacles? I'm not great, but when I get back to the bed, I'm told I can go home. I can't quite believe this. Less than 48 hours ago, my major brain surgery hadn't even begun. Now they're giving me a pat on the head, which is a bit of a risk, but they're the experts. And telling me I can go. So a few hours later, having said my goodbyes and offering the profoundest of thanks, I find myself walking back alone to the corridors of the hospital, carrying a big bag of drugs, because when you've been away from home for a few days, it's important to bring back treats. And I meet my friend who's given me a lift home, and I sit in that car and I think about what I have just experienced. Now, I can't pretend to you, Chelmsford, that it wasn't absolutely terrifying. At the same time, to be surrounded by that many people who are at all times just doing their absolute best to help you, it is overwhelming. It's an air of competence and kindness that is so alien if you've worked for the BBC. And then I go home to try and resume a normal life. So I'm back home with my family and had the operation every morning with my massive bandage concealed under a big hat. We all walk to school together and I'm just sort of drinking it all in. You know, it's amazing. The sky, the trees, the birds. And we drop the children off at school. I don't go straight home. I go out for a little tentative walk. I walk through a field and a meadow, along the river. I snake my way up through town and I just feel so lucky and grateful. Honestly, the world, it looks more beautiful to me than it's ever looked. It's not autumn yet. When I'm out in the fields, there's all these different shades of green everywhere. And when I mull anything over, it's with an entirely new perspective. I now know what my priorities are, what life means to me. I used to read interviews, articles with people who had been through serious illness, and looked on it as a blessing, and I thought, how could they? And then I started to think, it is, though. It is. It's a blessing. I start to think of my tumour as a beautiful gift. That feeling lasts 2 weeks. Roughly, by coincidence, the same length of course of steroids that I was taking. Absolutely cracking stuff. The doctors, they told me my seizure really could have happened at at any time. I could easily have been driving. I could have had passengers. I could have been in a locked room. It just so happened that I was in a city, in a work environment. There were people around that knew first aid. There was a set medic employed. The paramedic got there really quickly. The whole thing happened, it turned out, right next to a hospital with a really big trauma unit. Now, that is not how everybody's story starts. It's not how everybody's story ends. And there's people I know that went through worse things at the same time, and I know that they were a lot braver about what they went through than I was about what I went through. There is a difference between being lucky and feeling that you deserve to be lucky, as was made clear at some length by Kylie Minogue. A few weeks later, I spoke to my surgeon. They explained to me that what had been removed had now been tested, and that meant they could tell me that the little tiny piece still inside me is grade 1, which is the least likely to grow again. It isn't impossible, but it's the least likely. And I said, so what happens to the little bit that's still inside me? He says, well, we'll keep a very close eye on it, but it stays there. I thought, oh my God, they've left clutter. Monsters. This isn't a story at the beginning and a middle and an end, because I'm very fortunately living the end. My operation was on the 15th of September 2021. I still take anti-seizure medication every day. I have regular MRI scans. I got my driving license back after 18 months. It should have been 12, but the DVLA is a shit show. Perhaps the whole thing slid into Swansea Bay and nobody's fucking noticed yet. I don't always notice when I'm walking along things on my left-hand side, and I bump my shoulder and my elbow and my hip quite often. And this, it turns out, is a symptom of something called right parietal lobe dysfunction, called spatial agnosia. But it's extremely livable with. Look, I've made it back to Chelmsford. And, that was always part of my long-term recovery plan. Sure, it's in the discharge notes. It did take a little while before I started telling people about this, and even now it feels difficult sometimes. It's arrogant to think people might be interested, which might sound disingenuous when you're standing under spotlights and you've been talking about yourself for this length of time. Hey-ho. The fact of the matter is, when you're doing stand-up, really what you're engaging in is a process of wrestling to understand things. And that is true whether what you're trying to understand is why some people stop immediately upon entering a train platform, rather than just sort of continuing their way along it to increase the available space and just kindly facilitate the ingress of others. Or whether you're trying to work out how you feel about life once you face the possibility of it imminently ending. It's just that the former is easier to answer. They really don't seem to know any better. Because I don't know any better, I'm going to carry on wrestling with this stuff. And so I thank you very much indeed for bearing witness, as it makes it less lonely and more financially viable. Sometimes you have an experience that just brings everything into sharp focus, any sort of trauma, a near-death experience. Hopefully you get on the other side of that trauma, but it changes you. What I like to do now, I make sure that I spend as much time as possible at home, surrounded by my family, and I make sure that I say to them as often as possible from the bottom of my heart, face to face, please, will you just put things away as soon as you have finished with them? No, I'm sure you know what I say to them, and I hope that others say it to you. I hope that you say it to them. Thank you so much, Chelmsford. Good night.